Welcome back to Making It Awkward. Today is part 2 of the conversation about making America healthy again. Don't get that confused, folks.
I'm your host, awkward dietitian Jessica Wilson. As you heard, today is the follow-up to the Make America Healthy Again episode. I talked with 3 folks about their reflections on the episode, my dad included, and I learned a lot from each one. Before we get to those, I'll share some listener feedback I received. Laurel listened to the episode with her daughter, who's a senior in high school. She writes, quote, "My teen's fantastic critique was something I hadn't really thought about. She literally just learned about PACs in her government class, and she was hot about the idea that Hutt was going on and on about corporate capture, but couldn't see the inherent hypocrisy given that PACs are essentially the same thing in political form. Deregulating financial contributions by allowing PACs and super PACs has definitely not favored the average citizen," end quote. She also says, as one final little tidbit, it sure felt to me that he hadn't read your book and didn't know anything about it. I've read it twice, and it's been a few months since I read it the second time, but I didn't come away from it thinking, Jessica Wilson. Now, there's someone who was upset at corporate capture and is a mama bear about vaccines, end quote. I love that. I'm glad somebody mentioned the book writing of it all. I always appreciate your feedback. And now a confession. I have traveled down a good many rabbit holes and have found fantastic resources like expert testimonials from Jillian Michaels to Congress at a roundtable titled American Health and Nutrition, A Second Opinion. The roundtable also included social media's Food Babe, RFK Jr., and Dr. Kelly Means, who I referenced today. Michaels testified about her personal experiences with exercise and diet. She referenced both the Anti-Diet Dietitians and Time Magazine article for reasons we have discussed here on the podcast. And she also expressed her dismay over seeing her friends, quote, jabbing themselves every day with fertility drugs, praying for pregnancy. My friends getting up at the crack of dawn to get radiated where the lump was found in their breast. And my friends swallowing fistfuls of pills to manage their debilitating anxiety and depression, end quote. Her next sentence was about the 80s and 90s. And it's all fascinating and part of a bigger picture. And I'm bummed we can't get into it all today. Dr. Natalie Ingram today gets into some of the why of things, like why Food Babe, the creator of a pea protein brand that advertises, quote, no nasty ingredients, gets to be on a panel testifying to Congress. I also talked to Kent Thomas about the men of it all. And finally, I talked to my dad about his reflections. Our chat went in a direction that I was absolutely not expecting and indicated to me that I make some assumptions about people's familiarity with the inner workings and definitions of food deserts, and also made me curious about the cost of food in the 70s and how stressful things were then, since his experience of what he could afford and ability to cook is not what I experience today. So I simply can't get into everything, which is quite a bummer for me. And the anti-dopamine parenting will be its own episode this year. Every time I think that I'm going to run out of topics for this podcast, new ones reveal themselves. One thing I will say about all of this is that the Make America Healthy Again journey is a circle. It doesn't have a destination or an origin, and it isn't consistent with which facts they consider to be true and the statistics they use. But people are very loud as they twirl about this circle. Let's start with Natalie and her insights into the people of all of these things. She studied medical sociology and the sociology of health, and I asked her about the people of it all. She talks about the 80s versus 90s, and I also asked her about the idea of opting out of knowing anything about Make America Healthy at all, which is something I often want to do. We talk a bit about Charlie Kirk's interview with Dr. Kelly Means. Charlie Kirk is the founder and president of Turning Point USA, a national student movement dedicated to identifying, organizing, and empowering young people to promote the principles of free markets and limited government. To give folks a flavor for his vibe, here's a clip of him. And he just happens to be wearing a Make America Healthy Again shirt.
I'm a gay conservative, and I just want to kind of ask you, like, what do you have to say for people like me who kind of feel like, I guess, it's kind of hard for gay conservatives because there's not a lot of us. So, like, what do you have to say to other gay people who need to realize, like, they do have a choice?
Yeah, first of all, welcome to the conservative movement. I don't think you should introduce yourself just based on your sexual attractions.
No, I agree. I like
because that's not who you are.
I like to be thought of as a person, and
for sure, you are a complete human being, and I'm sure you treat people well, and you're studying something. So I want to get away with this idea that you're gay anything. I just think that we have gone a long way in the negative direction in this country, where we act as if the most important part of your identity is what you do in the bedroom. It doesn't mean that much to me, but if you ask from a perspective as a Christian, I don't agree with that lifestyle, but politics is about addition and multiplication. I imagine you agree with a lot of what we talk about.
Absolutely.
Right? Strong borders, strong country. And for that, we welcome you into the conservative movement.
Thank you.
And with all of that, here's Dr. Natalie Ingram. Natalie, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me again.
I'm always so grateful and glad to have you on. Can you tell us about the health-related hats you wear and have worn?
Sure. So I have a master's in public health from Indiana University, and I was interested in health psychology as an undergrad before that. So I have a decent amount of academic training. My PhD is in sociology, but it was a focus on health, sociology of health and medical sociology. So I've published 20 plus academic journal articles of different areas of health, mainly LGBTQIA plus health, as well as things on body size and gender and sexuality. I've done a few applied health positions. So I worked as a HIV tester and peer education program coordinator at the University of Tulsa when I was in AmeriCorps. I worked at Lion Martin Health Services, coordinating a health intervention with older queer women where we met. And now I teach health and society primarily to nursing and dental hygiene students at my current institution. And I try to keep up with kind of sociological perspectives on health, since that's my primary area of research.
So I introduced you to Make America Healthy Again.
You sure did.
You're welcome. Since you have the people of all of this type of background, can you tell me about your concept or your understanding or what you would picture to be the again of it all?
I definitely imagined, because it was borrowing from Trump's MAGA language, this sort of imagined past where everyone was perfectly healthy in the way that everyone was perfectly middle class and straight and white, in terms of this imagined past of getting America back to this state, I guess, of health in this case, which is interesting given what we know about how chronic conditions have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. But
right.
Yeah, that's what I imagine, right? Is I think it tends to be we're going to get back to this 1950s nuclear family, GI Bill funded middle class life where nobody had chronic conditions, except they really did. And we won't have all these modern problems of, I don't know. I'm sure their list is long of the modern era problems.
Yes. Of the top 12 rates of death in this country, 11 are diet related. Yeah, I can only find 10. The top 10. It didn't give me top 12.
Okay, yeah,
the CDC wasn't top 12.
Yeah.
I could see the case for them, except for accidents, which was number 3.
Yeah. I'm do they want to go back to infectious disease killing us instead is the plan, I guess? If it's not chronic illness, I don't know what they imagine kills people besides chronic illness, accidents, and infections.
Right. Polio? Is that where?
I mean,
I don't know.
Maybe. So yes, maybe that's what they're imagining is we just want to go back to when people died of terribly painful infectious illnesses instead of these long-standing treatable chronic conditions.
Right. And RFK, I mentioned, his upbringing and how no one had chronic diseases and how
no one had autism.
Yeah, that part. I was oh, is that how it works? Okay.
Yeah. So I guess also this pre-imagined time where nobody was neurodivergent and everybody just bootstrapped it up during school and education systems.
And everyone excelled in a structured classroom.
Everyone did great. Yeah.
Yeah.
There definitely wasn't kids that fell through the cracks like that I have in
Mm-mm.
my own family.
Nope. Everybody enjoyed going to school.
Mhm.
Quote, tantrums were treated, appropriately and well. Mhm.
Yeah. Physical violence against children in schools and out of school worked super great.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, all of that imagined past of how that was supposed to work. It'd be cool to go back in time and reverse some climate change stuff. But I don't think that's what they're imagining either.
Mm-hmm.
It in the Making America Healthy Again.
Right. Or, moving people away from plastic or oil refineries and manufacturers, getting rid of, say, oppression and other things that, can create chronic conditions. But no. What we want is actually mom in the kitchen making whatever it is. And yeah, my mom made, or we all ate around the table every night. I'm like, oh yeah, what were you eating? And like, why was that possible?
Yeah, no, there's definitely, so I'm teaching gender in my intro sociology classes this week, and we talk about the traditional family and the breadwinner homemaker model and how second wave feminism emerged, because it was really like, okay, who was that model working for in most cases? And the answer was not women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and also not most women of color who were already working outside the home due to economic circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, this imagined era of ideology of separate spheres of women are in the home and men are at work, and there's a living wage to be made by a male breadwinner is also just not our economic reality after the 1980s of outsourcing and loss of manufacturing as an economy. So the idea that we can kind of shove all that back into the genie bottle to go back to that time and erase, 40 years of not so great economic policy is a really interesting delusion that I would love to live in. But
I think that
not maybe a realistic policy vision.
Policy vision. Yeah. No, that's good. I really feel that is the, again, people are pulling on. And then when it comes down to the big food and big pharma of it all, they really call back to what happened in the 90s, whatever it was, it started in the 90s. And I'm like, those are not the same things at all. Yes, the school lunch of it all. I'm like, do you know what I was eating in the 80s for school lunch? Yeah,
so that's the thing is that like when he was talking about corporate influence and the corporate capture piece, like I'm on board with you on the problems of too large corporations, like reducing like lobbying and fighting, like putting out either bad policy or lobbying against helpful policy. Like I'm on board there that large farming corporations and food corporations like are not making great decisions by design because they are profit focused and not people focused.
Yeah.
So like I'm with you. But it's interesting to start it in the 90s and not in the 80s with deregulation of across all government systems under the Reagan administration. So it's interesting where they decide to start like when the problem started in terms of like food quality, food safety, climate differences, like environmental deregulation, all of that piece. Like nobody's going around critiquing Reagan because he's the Republican golden god. And I don't know if they're allowed to do that.
Got it.
Especially in, like he mentioned, he comes from a Republican family, even though his vibe was the Ross Perot Republican.
Yeah.
But like people have pictures of Reagan on their walls, like they do, like, so I think it's just interesting where they start to like, when did it start to crumble? Oh, like let's bring in the Clinton era of like when things started to go badly for the country.
All right. Something else that came up in the Charlie Kirk and Dr. Means interview was that I'm just going to call Charlie by his first name. We're going to pretend we're friends. Yep. Charlie was saying, like, you don't have to convince me of like these things that we're, supposed to be eating or like things are bad because I eat like 6 foods. It was like, oh, do you? Okay. Sorry. 6 foods, dessert twice a year.
Twice a year.
Twice a year.
Okay.
Christmas and birthday? I don't know. Who knows? That's what these guys
even that woman on TikTok who has MCAS who only eats however she can prepare oats in like however many ways she can do it, prepares them like 20 different ways, including desserts. So like, what do you mean you only eat desserts?
6 foods.
6 foods.
I don't know.
I mean, if you want to talk about neurodivergence and ARFID and only eating a small amount of foods, then like we can have that conversation, sir. But you know,
I was thinking about that from, honestly, I did a back-to-back. We were podcasting this and webinaring on ARFID at the same time. And I was like, this is what we pathologize in so many people. Also people with eating disorders and like where, you know, like we
like
say
only having 6 safe foods is a short list.
There you are.
Yeah.
And no other foods, not even like challenge foods. Like we won't even go there. It's just 6 foods. Mm-hmm. And I can stretch my foods twice a year and have desserts. Also, his children don't, of course, get sugar. And guess how much they spend on groceries a month?
Oh, God. I mean, how many kids does he have?
Just 2.
2.
Just 2.
I'm going to guess easily $2,000.
They spend $1,000 a week on food.
Oh, okay. So that was a severe underestimation. I should have thought back to when I was doing the autoimmune protocol and like bumped that number up plus inflation.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I should have done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I was like, you can multiple mortgages of
That's
mine.
more than my monthly take-home pay as a PhD level assistant.
Oh, no. I'm not.
That is more than my paycheck.
Oh, well, so yeah, no big deal. That's just food.
Super attainable.
Right. Just food. So, you know, if we want to go with what Charlie is up to, because that's just, you know, the best way to do it, that's fine. Also, in the same episode, like, I mean, Charlie did seem to be trying to have empathy for people who could not eat like he did. Maybe he recognizes that it's a little unattainable. So he asks Dr. Means, like, what do you say to that mom who, whatever, I'm not going to go into, like, that mom who can't spend $4,000 a month on food for her children. Like, what do you tell her? And Dr. Means said that we should tell her that you need to do everything in your power not to feed your kid that crap.
And we only need to tell the moms that because they're solely in charge of food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then the assumption was because you hear that you're poisoning your children, then you will do everything in your power to not do that. That
will magically overcome your social class and food security level.
Job availability area. Like, I don't understand exactly what is going on here. Like, we're talking, or I'm sorry, not we. The gentlemen, the bros, are talking about they're caring about all of the people with chronic diseases. They care so deeply about school lunches. Yet, if I were going to assume something, like their children are not eating school lunch unless they're going to some private school that only has
a salad bar or something.
Yeah, I was thinking, that only have salad bars and other things like that. So the people that they are talking about, the Americans, the gross Americans are talking about, like, are the ones that you would say, like, don't eat that crap. You're poisoning your children. What's happening? Like,
I don't know. Again, that's like, I think in some ways, the illusion that they want to go back to where people have all this equitable food access to like eat in a way that is nutritionally dense and like a variety of foods sounds great, but the policies they want to put in place would not get us to that, or would not get most people to that outside of the top 5% wealthiest people that they're imagining who can spend $4,000 a month on food. And the option wasn't a tips or tricks, it was a shaming. So I don't really understand how that was particularly helpful, since we have really just decades and decades of evidence that shame-based public health programming doesn't work ever for literally anything, although it doesn't stop people from doing it, as you have talked about in public health campaigns, especially around like soda taxes. But yeah, despite like mountains of evidence that that's not a motivator for people.
Mm-hmm. Well, was there a time where food access was more equitable?
No. I mean, I don't think so.
They're going back to a time. And I was
Yeah,
like,
I imagine if you sort of looked at like immediate time before SNAP was first introduced and then the difference that SNAP has made or food stamps has made in terms of like at least baseline hunger, like childhood hunger, you would see a bump there, an improvement there. But, you know, even SNAP has been regulated down to a fraction of what it once was in terms of funding to support families that struggle with food scarcity. So I don't know when that time was that they were imagining that like everybody had access to all the different kinds of food that they wanted, but I have never known it in my lifetime at least. And I'm 40, so.
Yeah. Did people in the 50s just not see poor people? Is that what, like, so I don't know. Maybe?
Yeah.
Is that what happened?
I mean, they saw them in certain periods of time, right? Like they saw them during the Great Depression with the creation of all the social welfare programs by FDR. And they saw them in other eras where social welfare and safety net got expanded. We saw it during COVID when we had all these child tax credits and this almost erasure of childhood poverty with like, you know, a change in where we put our money. But I doubt they want to recreate that time in terms of social policy and you know.
No, because COVID was a hoax, Natalie.
Right. Yes. And
Yep.
doctors are being paid to put it on death certificates. That was something that a family member said to me.
Oh, yeah. In Tucker Carlson's interview, Intro to Dr. Means, it was like, and we all know that, you know, 2 years ago that the COVID vaccine didn't work.
Do we know that?
I don't think.
I'm not in your we, sir, because I turns out I believe the scientific studies that show that it has actually reduced death rates drastically.
Yeah. COVID was in my house and I did not get COVID. Like, I feel like that is some good. No, I'm sorry. That's my bias. I'm looking at this research through a biased lens.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I am, my bias is that I would like you to give me and my child all the vaccines possible all the time. That's our approach to our own bodies and our child's healthcare is, yeah, sure. I got excited when I did some blood work and all my titers were all positive for all my vaccines. I was like, love it. Grateful to not be getting measles, mumps, or rubella anytime soon.
Yeah. Because you and I have lived in and near the Bay Area where, you know, all of the Marin County folks with the lowest vaccination rates, you know, did get some measles.
You know what it is? Is they are just what they want to disrupt herd immunity and create something new. Okay. Like in their tech parlance. They're going to take that tech money and disrupt the idea of herd immunity and create something new and different with some organic elderberry
or just getting measles and therefore
or just getting measles. It's just like chickenpox. It doesn't cause deafness or a bunch of other long-term life-threatening things or death.
No.
We don't have Little House on the Prairie stories of kids dying from measles that we have, you know, read in our childhood. No?
Yeah. In the lack of for-profit healthcare, for-profit big pharma, for-profit big food, does that look closer to socialism or like what? I truly don't know. Like this is
like if we didn't have big pharma and like privatized healthcare.
Yeah.
It's genuinely hard to imagine a world where that is not the case. I was curious that like the blame was solely on big pharma and there was no mention of the health insurance industry.
Yeah.
As a big driver for cost of medicine, inequalities in medicine. You know, not that I do not have my personal and professional critiques of big pharma. certainly do. That is a whole wing of medical sociology. I think certainly it can look like the way that nationalized healthcare looks like in almost every other industrialized nation, in that, very wealthy people will still have access to private doctors and faster and better medical care. Yeah. But it does mean that, everyone else will also have improved access to care and preventative care, especially to catch chronic illnesses earlier before they progress into or go untreated and cause some of these really bad health outcomes that I think they're talking about when they're with genuine concern about chronic illness.
Yeah.
It's worth having a genuine concern about. I don't disagree with them on that point, but I do think it has to look like a big shift in political will of where our funding goes, right? It has to be a shift away from our tax dollars going to military and a shift back into national social welfare programs and a push towards some kind of national health insurance, be that an expansion of Medicaid and Medicare, whatever, expansion of the veterans insurance, that, expansion of the federalized national socialist healthcare that all serving government representatives get at the national level. We already have a lot of socialized medicine through the VA, through our government, for government employees, through Medicare and Medicaid. But an expansion of that would be just that. It would be an expansion of our already existing socialized medicine systems to make sure that everybody could actually get the same access to care. And literally every other industrialized country has done it. We are the odd ones out in that we have given priority to private healthcare and private insurance, and profit over access to care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the podcasts did mention how healthcare benefits from people using it more often. Yes. So that actually aligns perfectly. What was interesting from Jeff was the connection to the money spent on military and weapons. I was okay.
That's the thing is there's occasionally, it's not even broken clock twice a day. It's there's actually a lot in there that I think they are in alignment with very progressive people in terms of the critiques of the amount of military spending, the amount, where money goes. Yeah. I think there are commonalities and critiques I wish we could get on the same page on with policy. It was very frustrating for me to hear those threads occasionally in that conversation you had with him and then be okay, but then why did you hitch your wagon to a candidate who is not supporting any policies that are going to get you closer? You think President Trump is going to get you closer to climate change policies that you want or environmental protection policies? In what world is he going to further regulate business? So it's actually really frustrating to be I think actually we're on the same page about the end goals on a lot of it. Maybe not we might even be able to get there about bodily autonomy in some ways, potentially. But it's hard with vaccines because herd immunity is a thing and you get, for it to work, people have to do it. But I think, in many other ways in my life and activism, bodily autonomy is hugely important. So I'm even more open to those conversations, but I'm all of that similarity. And yet the choice was yeah, but we really want Trump to win in those states where Mr. Kennedy isn't running anymore. And I was how is I was with you with A plus B, and then when you got to C and took a hard right, I just don't know how you got to X in this situation where Trump was the best option.
The best we could do
based on these other priorities that you say you have.
Yeah. What my vision for their vision is that Trump will be in office and he will just turn and say, okay, stop that. Right. That's it. And therefore it's gone. Yeah. Any, industry influence, he just said to stop it. There's no policy needed. We don't need bigger government to regulate these industries. He just said, stop it. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah. That's definitely how it worked last time. So why not try it again?
Yeah, because I'm sad that I didn't
this
bring
time
up
featuring more felonies.
I'm sad I didn't ask. Like, aren't you asking for bigger government to regulate these things?
Because it sure does. If you want
Right.
climate change and environmental protections, like you're asking for more regulation, and that is never a thing he is going to give you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are paying the price with like the largest listeria meat recall in the last however many decades because of deregulation of food systems that happened during Trump's previous presidency. Like, you know.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm like, I like, there are so many ways we could get on the same page, but like the choose your own adventure of it, you chose on your own adventure that I don't understand. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. In one of the interviews with RFK, Dr. Means was saying that 66% of the people Americans have prediabetes. Quick Google. real quick. Like the first citation at the top from the CDC was like 1 in 3 people have prediabetes. And I was like, so we're doing opposite math, but that, and then
the pre-diabetes,
which is like everyone else, which we've talked about on the show. Okay. And then the Department of Defense budget is half of what it is for diabetes. So we're spending twice as much money on diabetes than on defense. Quick Google search again. It's the opposite. We have 800 billion and we have 400 billion for diabetes. So what do you think is the people of that all? Because I'm either saying you don't understand science and math, which seems unlikely and rude, but is that what's happening? I don't think so. What are you expecting me? Are you just telling me facts and hoping that I believe them?
Oh, I think 100% that's what they're not expecting people to actually.
Oh, that's it?
Do the research. Or
okay.
I think there's been this fascinating and sociologically studied and / scary, carving away of like science as the premier moral and factual authority in society, this like increasing distrust of science.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that they know that like most people are still in this place of like, I need you to give me statistics to back up your statements. Like you need evidence. But then I think when you push back to say, well, my evidence that I'm getting from the CDC or that I'm getting from the NIH or whatever it may be, then they can push back to, well, they're biased scientists. Like, why should we believe their information? They're just working for big pharma. They're funded by, da-da-da-da-da. So I think that what you can get into in terms of a spiral is like, you can present them what you believe to be pretty solid scientific evidence. And if it doesn't agree like with their perspective or their argument, they're going to be like, well, but they're like, that's biased anyway. Like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So it like gets into like, there's not any evidence that they're going to believe that doesn't push forward their argument in a lot of ways, which is hard because then you can't like, what conversation is there to be had if they're going to dismiss it? And I think that happened certainly with COVID and vaccines, where it was like this, immense distrust of places where people might ordinarily get their medical information, distrust of providers. And again, it's not that like providers are perfect. Like medical sociology as a foundation is built on critique of medicine and racism and sexism within medicine. It's not that medicine or clinicians never make mistakes or are infallible, but I do think it's like a larger trend. And Jennifer Reich talks about this in her work on vaccine hesitancy, this like larger trend of distrust in science. And like sociologists talk about this, like as a shift from like, previously we had religion as kind of moral truth and center. In the 20th century, it shifted to science and like medicine in particular as like what we look to for like truth and understanding of the world. And we're now in this like interesting postmodern space of like starting to distrust science, but there's not one thing that has taken its place. Religion hasn't necessarily fully come back to take its place. It's like this weird amalgam of, I don't even know. like, so yeah, I don't know the people of it all. I don't like, I think the arguments get circular and challenging to engage in when we're not agreeing of this, like that the same sources are saying the same thing even.
Yeah. Do we just opt out of all of this, like that can't.
Yeah. I mean, I think the hard part is like the more people that are brought into those kinds of narratives, like the harder it becomes to opt out, because we do face situations like immunizations and herd immunity where we really do need the vast majority of people to buy in for it to work. Like we have to keep having the conversations. And there's obviously going to be like a small extreme of people who are never going to get back on board. I do think there are like a bigger chunk of like maybe they imagine undecided voters, but the people who are like maybe a little more skeptical or like had a bad experience who could potentially be swayed back into back into a little more critical thinking about sources of information and what that looks like. Now, how to do that? My hope really, I came out of that thinking like, oh, if we could all like agree about a few different channels and pathways that I see, I'm like, cool. A bunch of us across political lines want the earth to stop getting hotter. Like, but beyond personal changes, like what policies can we push for that are like legitimate bipartisan cross-party policies? I do think that actually efforts toward dismantling the two-party system and having room for many political parties is like a potential avenue to disrupt a lot of the things that people on both extremes of the political aisle are skeptical about in terms of the way government works in concentration with corporations, especially. I do think like having a model for like legitimate, I don't know if that looks like democratic socialists or working family parties or, just a wider variety of representation to allow for coalition building in a way that like the two-party system doesn't do. That seems promising to me right now because I am like energized by the idea of like the working family party, and when I am like not at all energized by the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
So I'm like third and fourth party, like it could happen, especially at more local, like state Congress levels. I don't know. Can we like, how do we trash the Electoral College? Like, how can we get rid of that?
It's like, that's unrelated.
I'm like, we just got to like rewrite the Constitution to get that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So I don't know. Like, those are like big, hard pushes though. But like, clearly the way we're not doing it right now is not going super great for anyone. I don't know. That's not really a health solution. But I think it is though. I think if there are like multiple parties that can get in on the discussion and maybe we can tax some mega corporations out of existence. I don't know. Like,
okay.
Just the like socialist dream or anti-capitalist dream, at least. Like there has to be an in-between from like pure socialism that hasn't been implemented well in the world yet to like a democratic socialism that actually works better. I have to keep hope alive for that possibility.
I think we all, have hope about something. And I'm glad that I got to ask you about yours. All right. For the second act, I talk with Kent about the man of it all. I got to listen to a podcast with Charlie Kirk talking to Dr. Kelly Means, who also spoke with RFK Jr. about Make America Healthy Again on his own podcast. Means is one of the loudest advocates for the movement and just so happens to advertise his business, TrueMed, as one of the solutions to the supposed crisis. Means said to RFK Jr. that, quote, "I am a foot soldier in your fight, Robert," end quote. Here's my chat with Kent. Kent, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Jessica. It's great to be here. And yeah, I'm excited to chat about what you've been exploring recently.
Especially, I'm excited to talk to you because your ability to bring the humanity of it all always just impresses me. And also because I would like to get into the man of it all here. I hope that you are able to make some sense of the Make America Healthy Again, which for context, Kent, if I abbreviate it, I'm not going to go with MAHA. I'm just going to go with MAHA, right? It's clear. All right. Don't be afraid if you hear that, if you hear me do that.
I'm curious, Jessica, why this deep dive into Make America Healthy Again? Like, I'm curious, what does it mean to you? It's important. And I'm also like, I would love for you to share why it's important and why this matters. Because when I saw MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, I think, yeah, it's even just the, connection to MAGA, like MAGA, MAHA. Yeah. So what about it is like interesting and fascinating to you? And you mentioned the men of it all, and it clearly connects to what you're doing in your work, but yeah, I'm
But
curious.
why?
Yeah. Yeah.
The connections to wellness were what really interested me initially. It was before like the Dr. Mark Hymans were connecting with Make America Healthy Again. I was seeing stuff online. It was like raw milk and like Make America Healthy Again. Actually, it was the thing that was listed as like a reason that the article about me, shouldn't have come out when it did. I am like Time Magazine should have like aligned with RFK and not put out an article about me and my work. And so where are the expectations, or like what are the expectations for society and societal opinions seem to be just like, of course we would align with Make America Healthy Again because it's a nonpartisan issue, which is exactly what Joe Rogan said. Why are they making this a right-wing issue? Or why are they being liberals or Democrats saying that this is a partisan issue when like everybody should be caring about it? And so I'm wondering, like, if everyone should be caring about it, that's fine. But like, then where do we go? And who was leading the conversations? Because yes, I wanted to ask you about the men of it all, because right now that is who I'm seeing as far as the like leadership of it all.
Yeah. With the conversation you had, what is his name again?
Jeff Hutt.
I was really struck by, he seems very kind and approachable, and like you two were able to have a kind, engaging conversation.
Yeah.
I think there were some things that he was saying that like kind of in the way that JD Vance right now is taking a lot of Trump's things and making them more palatable and more like less extreme. I feel like this guy also was kind of saying some things that are like, yeah, we want people to have more access to food, or we want to not shame food choices. But then he will also say things like, so therefore the answer is to vote for Trump. The answer is to control what people can use SNAP benefits for. And I think those things, so it's kind of like, yes, 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 no. And like that, yeah, the men of it all. And I know we were texting earlier about how men have been the most vocal against your work.
Yeah.
And this could truly be a wild association. But like with men, like, of course, there is the domination idea of like mind over matter, mind control body. Like you can just think your way into doing something. You can bootstrap your way. So with the Maha stuff, it's like, so his thing right now is getting people to vote for Trump so that RFK can have a meaningful way to like impact the health of America. And it's just like, whoa, like, let's not, honestly, in both places, left and right, let's not put so much faith in voting. Like, there needs to be more than Trump to save us. There needs to be more, like, yeah. So I think it felt like making a big thing out of a nothing thing. Like,
tell me more.
Just like RFK's voice in the Trump realm, that's not gonna meaningfully change health outcomes for America. And it felt at this point, something that the Jeff guy said was, it would be very demoralizing for our supporters to just feel like nothing came of their support. And so at that point, it's a ego thing. It's like we need to do something with this So I guess, I'm kind of skeptical of why all this work. And then he said he's independent, but he clearly leans Republican. And then it's like, Joe Rogan saying it's why is it a right wing thing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, people all over the spectrum care about health. It's just like, how are we talking about it? I would be more on the progressive side. I'm not going to make a slogan or care about a slogan about that. I'm clearly not going to shape it after MAGA. So it's just like, this by definition is a right wing thing. So therefore Joe Rogan is wrapped up in that conversation. And I wonder the fact that there's not a ton of women in this realm. It does feel like it's kind of a macho way of going about health, and that maybe this movement isn't that interested in what women would have to say.
Mm-hmm.
Just that it's more about taking control, and so maybe they don't care what women say in general. But also specifically to this, I'm just curious how that plays in. But I hope this, you're calling in to question these things, catches their attention, because they need to have that kind of insight and challenge. And then at the same time, it's it's Joe Rogan.
And Joe Rogan is going to tell his audience to vote for Trump so that people can have vegetables in their school lunches. I mean, because that could happen, Another reason I was interested, per your earlier question, is because I feel, again, like you said, there are the things we agree on. So, let's get together. Let's see how you talk about these things that we supposedly agree on. I want, tastier school lunches for kids. I would love for them to not have boiled corn as their vegetable, because that's just sad. Warm baby carrots. I assume the kids don't love those every day. Let's talk about those things and then see if we can come up with a realistic solution. So, I'm mostly interested and invested in how people are talking about this, how people are talking about soil, talking about farming and sustainable farming with soy and, corn farmers. And
that is such an important question. How do we realizing that the Jeff guy, I'm guessing he clearly has a lot of things that would align with what you and I would hope for. Like you were saying, school lunches and having more access, and then it is just the tools that I would hope for versus what he would hope for are completely different. So then at that point, it's okay, that's.
Or has he only been exposed to the end corporate capture of it all because that's where the conversation ends? I don't know, because he mentioned food deserts, that he thought about the question and he said he didn't have an answer. So, I mean, he was thinking about one, and his answer was mom and pop stores, but would he be open to talking about, again, policy, redlining, all of these other things? My guess is yes, or at least hearing about them. So, I'm totally going to follow up and see what happens. But is that just a conversational or an opportunity to perhaps get on the same page, or at least in the same book? I don't know. Because it doesn't seem that hard if we have the same goals.
Yeah.
But is it?
Right. I mean, maybe with something personally, when I hear conversations about health, I really perk up around just given my own experience with eating disorder stuff, health was such a contributor to eating disorder stuff. So I have some personal baggage with the idea of health and how we talk about it, but there might be some easier connections, or a Venn diagram when maybe right and left talks about health, where it's the access, autonomy, where it's when we're talking about freedom, that is it's guns and it's gay sex. It's the way we talk about it can be like in completely different books, as you were saying. But with health, it does feel like there might be some kind of overlap that could be a place where policy could overlap. I don't know.
So with your eating disorder stuff and the stuff that I've read from you, this totally actually aligns, because the control, the muscularity, the way that you talk about just manness, manhood, masculinity totally like fits in with the man of it all and like the concerns that people are saying. Something in the health realm that I have never heard, but heard 3 times on a podcast, was about fertility.
Oh.
And I was like, what? Like, I have not heard that one. I'm surprised. Where did this come from and what's the concern?
Huh. Yeah, and it is both with, I mean, the fertility thing and with any aspect of health. It's like, we really, like, it makes sense that we want to try really hard to control these things and have, like, our minds control what our bodies can do. So I guess it makes sense that fertility would be one of those many things that are talked about.
That one says to me like manhood. Like
exactly.
the ability to reproduce.
Yeah. That's a pretty central thing in, I guess, these spaces. I'm thankful to say I'm not familiar with really any of these people. I'm familiar with Joe Rogan because Fear Factor.
Yes.
I think even though I tend to think about the queer men world that I don't think has much overlap with the Joe Rogan world, there are some similarities in maybe just people in general, but our hope that we could control our bodies. Because honestly, life is scary and having a body is scary. So it's like, I see the ways that it manifests in queer men because I'm a queer man and that's where I tend to spend my energy, but it's clearly showing up in these ways amidst the quote manosphere. And yeah, like you were saying, maybe there is some, I don't see much good that could come from what, I clearly have a bias against these kinds of guys that would talk about things in that way around like whatever protein supplements or cold plunges or something like that. But like we talked about, maybe physical health could be something that would be easier to have policy kind of connection around, like easier than the guns and gay sex of it all.
Or at least healthcare policy, if not health policy.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. We should.
But yeah, that I think I definitely have more to think about.
I appreciate you taking time to come on here and do like a thought experiment with me today.
That's a great way to put it, Jessica. A thought experiment. And
I'll bring you back sometime soon. And lastly, I'll leave you with just part of my wide-ranging chat with my dad, with the rest to be explored at a later date. Dad.
Yes.
What did you think about the concept of Make America Healthy Again?
The concept of the idea of the eating was fine.
You think that, yeah?
But I'm not on a libertarian front because that hands off of foreign policy and everything else is, no, that's not going to work because the rest of the world will just suck you up. But,
okay.
Their belief in nutrition and stuff like that is cool.
Okay.
Yeah, that I like. But as far as hands off, and then if you do hands off war policy, then you're going to be hands off of your country's policy also.
Food policy and all that business.
Yeah.
And then it's a super PAC to get Trump in the White House, and then assuming that RFK will end up with.
No, I can't equate. What was his name?
Jeff Hutt. He was great.
Yeah, he was great. I mean, you guys got, he was great. But I can't equate Kennedy Jr., I guess he's a junior or whatever.
Yeah.
And Trump I can't equate those to go along with libertarians. That just doesn't work because their ideas are too bizarre and too extreme.
So Trump is too extreme?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Those are the
Those two are too extreme. to equate with libertarian.
Okay.
It's just too extreme. And I'm quite sure pushing to get Trump in will not support your libertarian ideas whatsoever, because that's not going to work. He's not a libertarian.
Correct.
And he will not support anybody's libertarian ideas. Even if you think you're going to get RFK Jr. on some sort of, what was he pushing for? Some sort of board?
Advisor.
Advisor. No, that's not going to work.
No, that's not going to work.
No, he will never become that. So his ideas of thinking on that term are too far-fetched for it to even happen.
Okay.
Even though the Koch brothers did push some libertarian ideas on some of the states in the U.S., and even those are not working. Got it. Yeah. So libertarianism is a fundamental idea that people like to think about.
Yeah, sounds good.
It sounds great.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, in practicality, in a world of people of different cultures, religions, it doesn't work. Okay. Yeah.
So you are on board with the food stuff. What do you think of the soil stuff?
So all of that works.
All of it works.
All of it, sustainable. So all of that works. In fact, we're doing it now.
Who's we?
U.S. is U.S. and the world is trying to.
What part?
That's an you push button.
No, like what part? I mean, you
from individuals, not major.
Oh,
not major, yeah. Like me, I did like composting and stuff like that.
Oh, like make gardening cool again.
I agree with that. People should raise their own food. Okay. Not looking at stop. So that way that stops you from complaining, or you might even see why food prices are so high.
Oh yeah, that's true. How much water do we pay for one tomato? Right, it's ridiculous. But yeah, I think that actually you're a good point. Why we're so reliant on like pesticides and all the herbicides that he was talking about, because it's fucking hard.
Try to do it. That backyard out there. I mean, I go out there and get fairly disgusted with the amount of weeds and pests. They're just,
the pests can ruin an entire summer.
And it's done. I mean, it's wiped out. Yeah. Out of this, I had, I don't know, 8 tomato plants out there, and I think result that there were probably 2 of them that were able to produce, because everything from water to the pest was, but from water to weeds and everything else, it was in the heat, and it's a constant battle. Yeah. So if people try to do that, maybe I'm complaining about the wrong thing, about the high price of food, because you look at it, it's easy to grow food. No, it's not easy to grow food. Yeah.
Well, so what do you think about that, and like that being the solution for people in like apartments and all these things that they're trying to pitch? I think that is silly. I like that your idea of gardening and his victory gardens and all that business, but like the solution to all of the food things. What do you think that is? It's not a garden, but I agree with what you're saying. Yeah.
Or like people that live in apartments and stuff like that?
No, I asked him about food deserts, remember? And he was like, I don't know.
I have yet.
It's hard.
I can't. Okay. But the reason that there is a store across the street from me is because they consider this a food desert. Yes. Yeah. Okay. But I go to visit friends that live in Cameron Park and the rest of the places. They are miles and miles away. They're in a car culture. They have to drive miles to get to a overpriced Safeway or something like that. So they are more in a food desert than the people that were living within 4 or 5 blocks of this store.
Interesting.
Yeah, they are. So they're.
But they're also rich.
All right. And then after this, we veered into talking more about neighborhoods, food deserts, and wandered into unexplored territory and food systems. We wrapped around to something more personal for him at the end. He talked about his experiences buying food in the 70s when he didn't have enough money.
When I was in my financial state, I realized that quick and convenient food was not a part of my existence.
Got it.
It couldn't be.
Too expensive.
And really, it's tough. You don't realize, man. I mean, you go into a grocery store and you're looking, I'm itemizing. I make out my list of what I need, and I go to the grocery store, if it's not affordable, I can't buy it. Yeah. Okay, what's the alternative? I can't go processed foods because that's too expensive. So, okay, I'm going to have to buy more of this lower price meat or veggies or whatever. So I'll have more and exist that way. And I did that for a number of years.
All right. Thank you for coming on the show today.
I'm sorry. This has been my own personal opinion.
Don't apologize. It's helpful to get old people. You know, you just have a different life experience.
Yeah, that lived through the time when wages were $2 an hour or $2.50 an hour. That's what I started out with back in the early 70s at $2.50 an hour. And it worked.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Peace, Holmes.
Will you come back, Dan?
If I'm not dead, somebody has to kill my butt for my comments or whatever. Been insulted by him.
Oh boy.
They might be upset.
All right, folks, that's as much as I can pack in today. We'll see how this conversation unfolds in whichever administration gets into office and amongst the social media influencers, and who the nutrition and health experts are tomorrow.
This has been Making It Awkward. You can support the show by joining the Patreon.
I'm Jessica Wilson. You can also rate and review the show. Thanks so much for supporting this work.
And this is edited by Jen Jacobs from Rhode Island, the only state that has a red chicken as a state bird.
Great job, Dan. Oh, wait.
Yes.
What's it sponsored by?
Oh, Legacy of Sacrament Outboard Service. Of course.
Of course. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.